Welcome to the B Block, our brand new section where some of our favourite GB News commentators have the chance to sound off on an important issue to them that's often been ignored by the rest of the media. And the horrific stabbing of Hatun Tash, the ex-Muslim turned Christian evangelist in Hyde Park this week while wearing a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt, has largely been met with silence by woke warriors who usually have no problem speaking up about imagined attacks by the right. GB News had the first broadcast interview with Hatun in which she described to Anaya Falora and Naman earlier today what was running through her mind during the ordeal. She said it was not just an assault on her, but an assault on free speech. So why the silence? Well, my guest tonight, Brendan O'Neill, thinks it's because Hatun is an outspoken critic of Islam. In a column for Spiked Online, Brendan asks, where are the cries of denunciation, or at least of concern? The woke left claims to be against fascism, yet it is airily quiet about a seemingly extremist attack on a woman for holding particular beliefs. Referring to the distressing case of the unnamed Batley and Spen educator, Brendan O'Neill added, we have got to get serious about freedom of speech, a country in which a teacher must go into hiding for displaying an image of Muhammad, and where an ex-Muslim can be stabbed for being offensive, and where all manner of supposedly bigoted speech can be punished with censure or censorship, is not a free country. And Brendan O'Neill, brilliant to have you here now for the first edition of B Block. And Brendan, this is just such a shocking story, isn't it? I covered it on the show earlier in the week, but the rest of the broadcast media just completely silent.
Absolutely. I think GB News has been one of the exceptions on this story. There has been some coverage elsewhere as well, a little bit here and there, but for the most part, there has been silence in response to what I consider to be an incredibly shocking incident, which is the stabbing of a woman, presumably because of her political beliefs, because of her religious beliefs. This is a very disturbing state of affairs. And I think what it points to is that there is a situation now where if you criticize Islam, if you are perceived to be an outspoken critic of Islam, then you are fair game for attack, you are fair game for abuse, and you are even fair game for violence. And this is the kind of thing that people who believe in freedom of speech really need to push back against and understand that we need to have full freedom of speech, including for people who are critical of Islam.
Yeah, I completely agree. So what do you make of Hatun Tash? The police have said she shouldn't be at Speaker's Corner for her own safety. What should she do now?
Well, it's down to her what she chooses to do. But the thing that should worry the rest of us is if you don't feel safe in the United Kingdom because you hold particular views, then that in itself is very, very worrying. Because what that suggests is that there are certain views that you cannot hold without being susceptible to violence, without being susceptible to censorship. And that's something that should worry everyone who believes in freedom of speech. Whether you agree with Hatun Tash or not is irrelevant. Do you believe in freedom of speech? And if you do, then you should be worried about the fact that this woman, this relatively young woman, this outspoken woman, cannot freely express her views without being harassed, demonized, and in this recent incident, without being stabbed. She was slashed with a knife simply because she is a critic of Islam and because she was wearing a Charlie Hebdo t-shirt and because she is an evangelist Christian. That is something that should worry everyone in this country who believes in freedom of speech. So this is a broader case. This is not just about one person being attacked. This speaks to a problem across the country, which is one in which we are no longer safe to express certain views without potentially being assaulted for them.
Indeed. Let's have a little listen to what Hatun Tash told Anaya in this exclusive interview for GB News, and I'll get you to react off the back, Brendan.
Freedom of speech is already in danger if individual is being offended because I said Jesus is the Son of God. Freedom of speech is already in danger because you are being blocked on social media because you said I said something about my faith people don't like. At Speaker's Corner, I don't think anyone should even be slapped or pushed around because it is heart of freedom of speech. Like, it's not, I am coming to your home and putting the Quran on your face. I am in a place under the law where I do the things I am allowed to do.
Brendan, what did you make of her?
Well, I think it's a credit to GB News and to you, Dan, and to Anaya as well, that you spoke to Hatun Tash and you are willing to tell this story, because so much of the mainstream media has not told this story and has ignored the fact that a woman was slashed with a knife because of her religious or political beliefs. That is something that should, in my view, that should be front page news. That should be a huge story. So it's a great credit to GB News that you have told this story. I think the points that were just made there are very, very important, which is that no one should ever be assaulted simply for what they believe. We can disagree with people, we can argue with people, we can push back against people in an intellectual way, but the fact that people can be assaulted in Speaker's Corner, which is the one area of the United Kingdom where you can pretty much say whatever you want, the fact that someone can be assaulted in that part of the UK is a very worrying sign of the time. So a lot of us have got to get real about the crisis of freedom of speech at the moment. And when we live in a country in which people can be assaulted simply for what they believe, then we've got to ask ourselves if we really live in a free country.
And of course, as you pointed out in your column, Brendan, it follows hot on the heels of the outrage in Batley and Spen over the teacher who hasn't been able to return to the school, and actually, more to the point, hasn't been able to return to his own home, Brendan, because he remains fearful of his life.
That's right. I think the Batley Grammar School teacher controversy is one of the most shocking incidents in this country at the moment, because what we have here is a school teacher who was drummed out of his hometown, drummed out of his home simply for displaying an image of Muhammad in a classroom discussion about blasphemy, about freedom of speech, about controversy. This is the kind of thing that teachers should be doing. They should be raising these questions with their students. They should be asking their students to think about these things. And this teacher was forced out of his town and his home simply for doing what teachers should be doing. And what was really shocking about that incident is that so few members of the educational or political establishment stood by this teacher.
I know.
So the teaching unions abandoned him. The Labour Party said virtually nothing about this situation. Very few of the candidates who stood in the Batley and Spen by-election were willing to talk about the school teacher. So we had a school teacher who put his neck on the line to do his job, and then very few people were willing to defend him. So I think the broader problem here is not that there are individuals who are being hounded, although that is, of course, a serious problem. It is that so few people in the establishment, in the elites, are willing to defend these people when they are being hounded by religious extremists. And we've got to start defending freedom of speech for everyone, including teachers who show images of Muhammad and Christians who are critical of Islam.
Indeed. Brendan O'Neill, thank you so much for being here on the inaugural B Block, and we'll speak to you again next week.